Judgment, 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 final judgment, final judgment, final judgment, final
Welcome everybody to Final Judgment, back again, episode 4. Man, we're on episode 4 already. Tony Jigsaw Cutillo, as always, follow me at Cutillo23. Most importantly, follow the show at Judge Jigsaw. Make sure you're subscribing on YouTube. Make sure you're hitting the podcast up. Man, this is just a blessed day. As always say, I'm blessed to be able to talk the world of sports with everybody. Today was a fantastic day. I just got done earlier. It'll be available on Monday for Monday's show. Talking to Kelsey Nicole Nelson, talking the NBA, breaking down the big Donovan Mitchell trade, talking the Nets, talking the Sixers, talking GOAT talk. A lot of stuff to look forward to. Tonight, three judgments because we're getting closer to Eagles football. I even changed the banner down there in little Kelly Green for everybody, to get into it, right? So, but I will tell you tonight, talking about the judgment number 1, let's talk about the Eagles. It is the hype real? Is the preseason hype real? That's what I want to know. And what I did was I got us a stud, man. I got Chris Franklin, covers the Eagles from NJ.com. Follow him at C Franklin News. I did a great interview with him. He was fantastic. I'm going to play half of that interview tonight. You get the first 8 minutes of that. He breaks down some really interesting insight into Jalen Hurts, into the team. The full interview will be available on podcast tomorrow on the podcast page and the YouTube page. So that's how I'm going to do things for these interviews. They're going to be 15, 20 minutes long, but we're going to do a little bit on the show. And then I want you to go to the page and listen to the rest of it because I'm telling you, these people are bringing it. And then we're going to talk a little general topic. And I dug on some interesting stats when it comes to fantasy sports versus sports gambling, because I'm curious to see, as the sports gambling industry rises, will the fantasy sports industry tend to go down? That's what I'm curious, because it's kind of dip it a little bit, but they're reinventing the wheel, so to speak, with several different formats for people to do. So I'm just curious, the judgment will be tonight. What do we think? Do we think fantasy sports is going to stay, or is just the sports betting? I mean, it's already taken over, but is it going to take it over so much it's going to blow fantasy out the water? And then we're going to end on some, as always, I'm a wrestling guy. I starting the show, I love that I get to talk wrestling, right? But I'm curious, man. Listen, another big name coming back to WWE, another big name. And I'm starting to be a little curious to what's going on here under the Triple H and Stephanie McMahon regime. So I have some insight. I have some theories, and I'm curious to see if you guys and gals will think the same thing. But again, let's get started. As always, powered by Heat Ratio Sports, powered by Win Daily Sports. Make sure you're following Heat Ratio Sports for all tremendous content by a bunch of different people. The personalities, got all different variety of shows. Make sure we just did a Heat Ratio Live on Tuesday, just breaking down the Eagles preseason thing, what we, predictions laying ahead, different players, things of that nature. And then also Win Daily Sports. If you're talking about fantasy sports, if you're talking about sports betting, that's where you want to go. WinDailySports.com. Right now, we have a tremendous promo going, $5.99 a week, $5.99 a week for all your fantasy and sports betting needs when it comes to the prop market. But let's get into it. Oh, and let's not forget, it's not up there yet. We're working on it. I'm getting the lingo. We're getting the imagery together, but SEObrand.net. Let's not forget about that, man. The digital marketing agency going to be the flagship sponsor of this show. Got some really cool things planned moving ahead. Let's get right into this Eagles talk, man. Let's get right into it because it's getting close, boys. It's getting and girls. Like I keep saying, I'm sorry because we do have some girls watch the show, which is tremendous, but it's getting close. It's getting close, and I want to dive into this hype. I do. Listen, I got the name Jigsaw for a reason because people say I go against the grain. I'm a little controversial. I'm a little confrontational. People may listen. Jigsaw ain't for everybody. It's okay, right? It's okay. I have no problem with that. But I try to look at things from a realistic point of view. And everything just seems great. I mean, obviously today, if you're not aware of it, Andre Dillard suffers a forearm displacement, which is not good. Luckily, it is our backup. But again, we have depth on the offensive line, and they do still, they project him to play most of the season this year. So that's an interesting injury. I asked, and you'll hear that, but again on podcast from Chris Franklin about the return game. What are we doing in the return game? I mean, we have seen this out play itself before where we went into a season and we didn't have special teams locked down and it bit us in the first game. We all remember that Green Bay game. We all remember Reno Mahe. Let's not do that again. So, those kind of things. Jalen Reagor is gone. Honestly, really, why does everybody care so much? Like, I don't understand. Like Jalen Reagor took over like the entire Philadelphia region for like an entire 2 weeks about would he be traded, where he's going to go. Why? He is a first round bust that didn't work. I mean, I don't understand. We all knew that. We all knew the eventual displacement of him. He was going to be released. He was going to be cut. He was going to be traded. He's going to be something. I know he made the team, but that was just a formality. We all know that. That was just because Howie couldn't find a dance partner yet. That's all that was. But I mean, really, like, well, I don't understand what the big deal was. Okay, we have more important fish to fry, so to speak. Okay, we got to figure out the direction of this team, and what I mean by that is the direction real? Is everything we're hearing real? We got a game one against Detroit that I'm going to talk a little more in depth about next week. That I'm not as peachy about as everybody else. I do think that we could have some problems out there in Motown City. I do. I think that this is going to be a very intriguing first game. A lot of different things can happen. Fantastic trade for CJ Johnson. I'm not going to try to say his full name because I'm just going to get tongue twisted and I'm going to make myself like an ass. So I'm not going to do that. So we'll just say CJ Johnson. He likes to be called that anyway. You'll hear that from Chris Franklin. But, you know, you got to give him some time, and we're going to talk to Chris to find out how much time he actually needs. But, first week, I don't think you can expect him to just be going crazy and running around and making tremendous plays and this and that. But I do feel that this gives us that swag. If you didn't see the quote I put out earlier on social media, make sure you're following at Judge Jigsaw, and you'll see all the quotes and you'll see all the show information. But, we haven't had swag in the backfield. And when I mean by backfield, secondary, since Asante Samuel, right? Asante Samuel, yeah, he had swag. He brought swagger. After that, we didn't have any, right? I mean, Slay is just a player in the sense that a playmaker, I should say. He's just a playmaker. But the one thing I will say is I really enjoy the swag that CJ Johnson's going to bring. Joe checking in says how he admitted 2 wide receiver draft mistakes, and it's still not enough for some. He's not going anywhere as he built a strong team this year. Now, I'm going to tell you something. That comment just shows you to me how much we have really, brought back in the Howie Roseman reigns. Okay. And when I say that, my man Joe is going to throw anybody in the water. Okay. And he's going to call it the way it is. And I know Joe was just like me, who wasn't happy back in the day with a lot of these draft fumbles and a lot of these weird trades and signings and things of that nature. Excuse me. But what I will say is Joe sees what I see. He sees a guy that's reinvented, a guy that very prideful guy. We talked about it last week that this is his team. He built this is his baby, his machine, and he is the evil genius in the lab, and he's doing everything he can. I mean, listen, CJ Johnson was great. Trey Sermon's no joke. Picking up Trey Sermon, I think, as a running back, it is a really good find. If he could just stay healthy, that's your Jordan Howard. Okay, that's your LeGarrette Blount. That's your bruising running back that you get, but he actually has more speed than those guys. So, going to be interesting. So Howie definitely very, very good job. And he continues to be good. But what we're going to do now, we're going to go to Chris Franklin. I'm going to throw up Chris Franklin right now. Let him talk about, he was at the practice. This guy's been covering the Eagles all year, last year as well. He's been there every day. This is what you call a real beat reporter. Okay, I will say that honestly. This is a real beat reporter, and the beat reporter's job is the worst job as a writer because they are everywhere. Okay, and I'll tell you what, he does this job amazingly well. He's he's a tremendous human being. He's not one of those guys that doesn't give you the time of day. He's great with his information, works harder than anybody I've seen in the business. It's funny the other day on Twitter, I think Les Bone even said, yo, calm down, kid. 3 pieces of content in a matter of like 3 hours. I mean, listen, he's a hustler. Chris is a hustler. He puts it out there. And he has some very, very interesting things to say when it comes to Jalen Hurts, which I think you are really going to like. I know I like it. I like when people talk numbers, right? So when people talk numbers, I listen. So we're going to listen to Chris Franklin right now, break down for the next 8 minutes. Again, make sure you follow him at C Franklin News on Twitter to get all the latest Eagles information. On a Rise and React media line tonight, man, what a time to get this guy on. NFL right around the corner. Eagles make cuts today. So you're seeing this the next day, getting all that hot news. I got Chris Franklin from NJ.com. Follow him at Chris Franklin News on Twitter. Chris, it's been a busy day, man. I appreciate you joining the show.
Hey, no worries, man. I think that's why we do this job, man. We wait for news like this to come out. So it's really a fun day.
Yeah, man. I bet. Like I said, you were always on Sirius a couple weeks ago. Thankfully, I had a Philly brethren with me. It was wonderful. Shut those New York guys up for a little bit. Trust me, it brought me joy. But talking about this team, I mean, honestly, I know it's hard not to be biased when you're from Philly, you cover the team, but you've been down there every day. You're at every practice. I mean, is the hype actually real around this team, or do we need to temper that hype a little bit?
I think especially after the trade for Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Well, that's what we call it.
Yeah,
CJ,
that's a tongue twister.
I'll say CJ like he likes to be called that one. But after trading for CJ, I think that this team deserves the expectations that it has placed on them right now. And that is for a team to be among the top teams in the NFC. I think when you hear what the players are doing from a player's perspective, they're taking it real easy right now. I asked Darius Slay today if he felt like, basically adding CJ onto this team, is it going to be even more immense pressure on them? And they're saying they already had a lot of pressure on them to begin with because they wanted to win. So I look at it as a thing of this team out on the outside, everybody wants to do it, but this team is just taking it as business as usual.
And that's what you want to hear, right? Because we've seen this with the Philadelphia Phillies, the energy level when it's at they're very when it's calm and everything's a big cat, they seem to play better. It seemed like they were pressed under Gerard, and I feel like that's what Sirianni has given this team culture wise. Now, speaking about CJ, we gotta love this guy. What I want to ask you about it is, you hear both sides. You hear, the Eagles got to steal. Then you hear people saying, well, why would they want to get rid of this guy? And to those people, I just say there's a money element to all these moves that you have to realize. But we're really going to like this guy in Philly, aren't we?
I think when you look at the attitude he brings, it's been a while since you had somebody on that secondary where you can go, hey, you know what? He brought this attitude to swagger. And I think when you look at Malcolm Jenkins and you look at Rodney McLeod, they had that quiet confidence about them. They like not like and I'm not calling him Gardner Johnson, Brian Dawkins or anything, but you didn't have that guy in the secondary where, hey, oh man, that's a guy. Not only is he good, there's something about him where you don't want to mess around. You're seeing the Weapon X stuff. You don't want to mess with Weapon X. I think Gardner Johnson has the ability to do that because he brings that attitude, the trash talking, that confidence back there on the back line, and with a guy next to Marcus Epps who's more of a quiet leader, just like Malcolm Jenkins and Ronnie McLeod, you have that now. That adds it adds a spark and a different element to that secondary, and even to the front seven as well too. So I think the Eagles fans are going to like him a lot. I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see it. So a lot more pushing and shoving after plays. Maybe he says something. I mean, the video's out there where he's with the Bears and he got punched in the face. And I'll give him a lot of credit because a lot of times somebody's punching you in the face. Someone you want to punch back and pick up 15. You just like you see this. Everybody's seeing this right now. Thanks for the free yards. So it's a fine line to walk, but he walks it well.
Yeah, you said swagger, and that's what I like about. Like, we haven't really had swagger since like Asante Samuel back there. You know what I mean? That guy, he walks the game, and I love this about him. Now, how long do you think? Because obviously it's a different system. He's coming in here. There was no training camp. I think people have to realize, like, day one against Detroit, he's not going to be this guy flying around getting all the plays down. What do you think is a realistic, option to say? You know what? By week so and so, he actually gets the grasp on the defense.
I probably say about week. I probably wouldn't be surprised to say about week 2 or week 3 because the main thing I look at when you're looking at a playbook or anything else, it's like learning a whole new language. It's like, okay, hey, you're going. Basically, in a sense, it's like, hey, you're going to Spain right now. Learn this all in a week. Wait, what? I got to learn this whole entire thing. What's going on with this? Well, the Eagles he's doing a little bit. He's staying a little bit extra. He told us that he actually told us he was running with the 1s and the 2s today, which is like, all right, cool. They're doing baptism by fire. Like, we'll see what you got there. So I'd probably say to get a full sense of it probably takes about 2 to 3 weeks in order to get like, okay, I know I have this tight end just down here. I know I got the slot receiver, and to get that full communication with Epps and all the other secondary guys. But I don't think it'll be too much. We won't see anything exotic, but they'll bring them along.
Yeah, that'll be great. And again, we're talking to Chris Franklin at C Franklin News on Twitter from NJ.com. Covers the Eagles, been doing for a while. I love every minute of it. He's down there every day. Make sure you follow his articles. Just dropped one today on Devion Taylor. He had the news coverage for CJ Gardner-Johnson we're talking about. But let's go to the offense a little bit because I am a huge, and I don't want to get crazy about it because Jalen Hurts has been a topic of discussion forever in this town, it feels like, right? And I'm an all-in Jalen guy. I just like his intangibles. I love how he just goes about his business. He's great in the community. He brings energy, positivity. He's a leader. I love every minute of it. So what is your read on Jalen? Because for me, I've been saying that this is going to be definitely a progressive year. It's the first year he's actually in an offense for the second year in a row. He's never actually had the same offense for more than 1 year, right? It's always been a different system. So what's your read on Jalen as a whole going into this year?
I look at it like a stock market line in a way where you see it's always going to be a little bit volatile. It's going to be all volatile, but as long as like you see the line, it doesn't go a straight 45-degree angle. You see it go up and down that. Well, I look at the beginning of training camp and it was starting to go up, down a little bit. He was still getting into the feel of everything, trying to get the touch on his passes, work out the new mechanics and stuff. And so you saw a lot of up and down stuff. But then you start as training camp progressed, he started to look a lot more comfortable. And I thought the place where I saw the most improvement when it comes to him is inside the pocket when he was climbing it, and also making sure that he was throwing a better ball in terms of his mechanics and his footwork. Because a lot of times when you're young quarterback, I don't blame him. When you got all these defensive linemen coming at you, you got 4 seconds to go, and you're athletic. I got to get out of here quickly. Well, he's utilizing his offensive line. The offensive line is one of the best in the league. He actually had the most, going back to last year, he actually had the most time in the pocket of all the quarterbacks that played at least 8 games. He had 2.7 seconds in there, which is not a lot. But when you're in there and you got that much time, it gives you enough time to scan the field and go through your progressions. And he's starting to rely on his progressions a little bit more as well, too. So usually goes 1, 2, 3. Okay, I don't have anything. Let him roll out and use athleticism that way. So the intangibles are always going to be there with him. The team still believes in him. You see his teammates, they're still willing to run through a wall for him as well, too. So it shows like he actually has that grasp on that stuff. So it's a matter of he can consistently do this for 17 games. And I think we'll get a good sense within the first 4 or 5 that, if he's going to be there. And given the schedule, it's set up perfectly for him to have a big season. Who knows? Maybe he gets that contract extension.
Check that out, man. Again, and that's Chris Franklin at C Franklin News. There's much more to that really good stat there about Jalen Hurts, right? About the time in a pocket that people may not understand. That's why I love these guys, man. They give us these statistics that we would never even know. And make sure you're following at Judge Jigsaw. You're subscribing to the YouTube page and the podcast page as well, because the full interview will be up tomorrow. Talks more about the running back depth, the running back situation, some interesting talk about the running back in the room. Obviously, Miles Sanders and about Kenny Gainwell. Some interesting things about Kenny Gainwell that I didn't know. So again, make sure you're following at C Franklin News, NJ.com, beat reporter for the Eagles. Fantastic stuff. So where do we go from there, right? It's in my mind that this is still all about Jalen. You heard it right there. Can Jalen be good enough to get that contract extension? I saw some things earlier about maybe it happens a little earlier than we expect, than we're expecting. A lot of people think he'll be a lame duck for the entire year. I really don't think he will. I think he's going to show the organization that I'm here. It's my team now. I think he's going to get a grasp on this offense. I think they're going to put him in the right positions, not to talk like Andy Reid, but right positions to make plays. And I think that we're going to be very, very happy. I went on. It's funny. I did it, and people think I'm crazy, but that's okay. I said live that I predict that we're gonna hear some MVP talks for Jalen Hurts this year. I do. I think that he's gonna be in these discussions. I think that's how well he's gonna play. Like, remember when I said it on Heat Ratio Live on Tuesday night when Carson Wentz was in that MVP discussion, right? I think that's what we're going to have with Jalen Hurts this year. I really think he's going to spin some heads, and I think he's going to set some people, the haters. He's going to shut them up a little bit. That's all I'm going to say, because I am a truther when it comes to Jalen Hurts, and I am a firm believer that he is going to do very, very well this year. So I want to hear that from you, right? That's what I want to hear. The judgment number one is going to be: is the preseason hype real? Are you buying into the preseason hype? Are you ready to say, yes, this is the team? Listen, I think it was actually Chris Sims. I don't think I'm a big Chris Sims guy for NFL.com, but actually put out there that he expects them to win the NFC, right? The entire conference. And listen, that's a bold statement. This is what's happening now. The national prognosticators are coming in and they're starting to jump on the film. We don't really like that. We don't want people to jump on our wagon. We want to be the underdog, right? We want to be the guy that nobody talks about, but they're talking about us, Pete. They're talking about us, people. Okay, so we got to do what we got to do. That means the Eagles need to step up, shell out, and win out. That's what we're saying. So let's move on to an interesting topic. Make sure, again, you're following at Judge Jigsaw on Twitter and on Instagram. And make sure you're subscribing. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. It's very simple. You go to the YouTube channel, The Final Judgment with Tony Cutillo. You hit subscribe. Boom, you're done. That's all you do. It's very simple. Podcast, the link is in the description. If you click on it, it can take you to anyone that you want. All it is it's called a magic link. And what it does is when you click on it, it gives you the variety. Do you want Apple? Do you want Google? Do you want Spotify? Do you want Stitcher? Do you want TuneIn? Do you want iHeart? Whatever it is, you go to it, you hit subscribe, boom. Like I said, if you can give me a rating, a review, I would greatly appreciate it. If I suck, give me nothing. If I'm good, give me 5, whatever you want. Maybe I'm in between. You're like, I don't know about this guy. It's okay. You saying something means everything. So let's talk about the world of fantasy sports for a minute. And this, not just, we're not going to talk about players, stuff like that. You want that, go follow me at I just hit my microphone all out because I'm getting all excited. You can follow me at Win Daily Sports right over there, doing all the streams. You can follow me. I do a Fantasy Firebox every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. We'll be doing streams throughout the week, obviously on Sirius on Saturdays and Sundays. But my question is, have we seen the ceiling and the peak of fantasy sports? And what I mean by that is, a long time ago, it was there was no fantasy league online. There was no commissioners, like virtual commissioners. There was no ESPN, no CBS Sports Line. There, none of that. No fan tracks. Nothing existed. No Yahoo. It was. I remember going to the barber back in the day, and I remember him, getting there. If I had an appointment on Monday morning, I was in trouble because I was going to be late. And what I mean by that is my appointment was going to be late because I was going to show up and he was going to be writing down the box scores from the Daily News or the Inquirer and manually tallying all the fantasy points all on his own. And that's what we used to do back in the day, right? That's what we used to do. Back in the day, we didn't have the computers to do it. We didn't have any of the social media stuff. That was it. And man, has it grown to a monster. But the question is, has that monster kind of been ceilinged out in the sense that, or I should say peaked out? It's gone to its peak. And now it's kind of, I'm not saying it's going to dive, but I think that we're going to take a hit. Okay. Because the world of sports betting is just taking over everything. I mean, let's face it. You can't turn on a radio station, a TV commercial, a pocket. You can't hear anything without hearing an ad for an affiliate link or an ad that's sponsored by DraftKings or FanDuel. Nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying that that's what it's taken over, right? I mean, it is taken over everywhere. And the way it's taken over is the prop market. I think the prop market is one of the most important things about sports betting. It takes the beginner or the average sports bettor and makes it fun, right? You're not betting all kinds of units and all kinds of money. It makes it fun. It makes it like that block pool that you would play growing up, right? You would play that block pool. I mean, it was like, hey, I'm looking at the game. I don't even have to watch the game, but I'm watching the game, and I just need this. I need this team to score a touchdown, and if it's 7-3 the first quarter, I win. Same thing. Javon second. And what's up, Javon? Says prop market makes betting fun. Absolutely. I mean, you can prop bet anything. And the NFL is even more exciting. Really is, because there's so many over and unders. We talk about so many games. I mean, we know already with fantasy sports, red zone just makes it so exciting, right? Scott Hansen, listen, on a Sunday, there's nothing better than that. Why? But now you add the sports betting realm into it. So not only are you looking at individual players for statistics, but you're looking at individual players for bets, for touchdowns, over and under yardage. But here's interesting. Here's an interesting stat. So looking at, and again, the latest I could find was 2019. Okay. So just to give you an idea, now this is in millions of number of fantasy sports players in the United States. And I just give you an idea how this number has shifted. Okay. In 2009, check that out. And by the way, we're going to start doing something. Make sure you're following at Judge Jigsaw, and you're following at Cutillo 23, which is where I lay a lot of fantasy content out there, because I'm going to be doing something called the Fantasy Flashback, where we're going to be posting guys from every single year to give you an idea of these remarkable seasons, top threes and receivers, running backs, quarterbacks. When you see some of these names, going to really make you flash back. That's why it's called the Fantasy Flashback. You go back and like, wow, look at the season this guy had. Guys like Priest Holmes and Larry Johnson, and we're not even mentioning some of these tremendous players that we watched back in the day. But 2009, 27 million fantasy sports players. 2014, 41 and a half. 41 and a half. And then 2015, the next year, we jumped to 56.8, almost 57 million. 2016, 57.4. You see, it's just, it gradually went up. And then the peak, the precipice, like we might call it, right? 2018, 59.3 million. 59.3 million fantasy players in 2018. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Like I said, the last number I could find was 2019. Now, in 2019, it dips down to 45.9 million. Fantasy sports lost 14 million fantasy sports players in a matter of 1 year. In a matter of 1 year. And why is that? It's because of sports betting. It's because of the prop market. I'm telling you, it has a negative effect. So the way that I think fantasy sports can really get into the limelight is doing different things, which you see these guillotine leagues, right? The guillotine leagues are starting where, it's basically a survivor of fantasy. It's the lowest number of points every week. Your team is out, right? Stuff like that to get people back involved. Obviously, DFS is a monster zone. Javon says the prop market makes betting fun, 100%. He says it helped me get into baseball more over the last couple of years, being able to learn about pitchers, hitters, etc. Now, I want to comment on that because Javon is so true when he says that. You know, back in the day, a lot of people would make the statement that fantasy sports was bad. You know why it was bad? Because it made you take away from the game. Nobody cared about wins and losses. Nobody cared about anything. They just cared about touchdowns and points. But I firmly disagree. And to Javon's point, I would never have the knowledge that I have right now of specific points in specific seasons and players in 4 different sports if I didn't play fantasy. I learned about players, I learned about schemes, I learned about structure. I learned about guys, the 4th guy on the bench, the 5th guy on the team. I didn't know any of those cats. Now I do. Not just because I want their points, because listen, Javon will tell you, if you're a true fantasy analyst and not an enthusiast, you know how much time that we put in researching numbers and trends and analytics? And you know what that does? It makes you even more intelligent. It makes you educated. So why on God's earth would it be a bad thing? It's a great thing. It's a great thing for everybody. You know why? Because it's not dumbed down. What it is it's making you learn more about the game. And yes, I get it. If you're a baseball purist, you say, "Oh, just watch the game and watch the box score." But if you're a realist, you say, "What can we do to bring new young energy into the game?" You offer up sports betting and from a prop standpoint. You offer up the DFS market because guess what? Indirectly, you're going to get educated because you can't play DFS without being educated. That's daily fantasy sports. It's not just season long anymore. You have to be educated. And I think that's one of the biggest things that biggest misnomers that people say is that they just think we're dumbing it down. We're actually not making it smarter and more educated. Ivan says, love the introduction of apps like Prize Picks and Underdog. Oh, I so agree with that. He said, gives you more exposure to players in sports most people won't pay attention to. Exactly. Take it. Listen, not to knock hockey in the NHL, but let's be honest. With the prop market and with DFS and with Underdog and with Prize Picks, apps like that make you learn about the sport that you otherwise wouldn't watch. This is only good for everybody, right? I get it. It could be a flooded market. It could be over the top. I understand that. But at the end of the day, it is good. If that means for baseball that bring fans back to the game, they have to interject more, or I should say inject more into the actual production. I think it's a good thing. It really is. Listen, I'm going to be fully transparent here. My wife hates sports. She does. Know why she married a freaking sports guy, but she did. But in all honesty, she does. All she likes is soccer and baseball. And you know what she's getting into now? Know why she likes baseball so much? She asks me every day, "Who'd you bet on? What home run props did you get?" Says it all the time. She's always asking that. And you know why? Because she said, "I don't even know what I'm doing, but it's fun." And you know what? She's starting about learn about other players that she never even knew existed indirectly. And that's what's great about it. Jose says, "I believe you don't watch the sport, you shouldn't bet." Jose, I said it in week 1, right? You know, I agree to disagree with that statement. I agree that you shouldn't bet on the sport and give out betting advice if you don't watch it. But from a standpoint of just having fun, that would be like me saying you shouldn't get into a block pool. Grandma can't put $10 on a block because she doesn't watch football, right? So I just still think there's a fun aspect to it. But your statement, if you parlay that into an analytical standpoint for people that actually do it for a living, I completely agree. I said that in episode 1. Fraudulent sports bettors. I'll say it again. People that have no clue about the game and they're telling you what to bet on. That is a huge violation. Ivan says, speaking of baseball and the NRFI props have brought so much excitement to the sport. Man, I'm telling you, man, the props have really excelled in so many ways I never even thought. And that's why I think that fantasy, you're never going to see that number go up. You're not. It's simple as that. You know, the 59.3 million in 2018, 45.9 million in 2019. There's a reason for it. There's a reason why that dip happened. So again, they're going to have to kind of reinvent the wheel a little bit, and I think they're already doing that. Okay, but prop betting is kind of a version of fantasy and DFS as well. Okay, because listen, you want guys to score touchdowns, right? So it's the same thing. Like at DFS, you just want a guy to score. So they will inject that. I just think the ceiling for fantasy sports is what it is, and you're going to get even more sports betting. So again, judgment number 2 is talking about fantasy sports. Do you think it has hit its ceiling and now the prop market and sports betting is taken over and they will have to reinvent the wheel? Or do you think they're going to be just fine and they're going to kind of be stagnant where they're at? They're not going to dip down anymore and you still think they're going to grow? I want to hear your judgment on that as well. Judgment number 3. This is going to be a fun one. Like I said, okay? I've told you that all the time. I absolutely adore professional wrestling. Right? You're going to hear me talk 2 things a lot on this show, and it's all going to be the Last Judgment. Okay? So people out there listening, if you don't like wrestling, if you don't like music, whether it be hip hop, whether it be R&B, whether it be rock, whether it be Motown, whether it be whatever it is, okay? I like to talk music and I like to talk about wrestling. And again, that's why I start this show. You know why? Because everybody told me what I had to talk about. Now I can talk about whatever the hell Jigsaw wants to talk about. And I'm a huge hip hop head and I'm a huge wrestling guy. And tonight, we're going to do judgment number 3. We're going to talk about the WWE once again. And the reason why, because it's in the news again. Another former champion coming back. Braun Strowman. It wasn't that very long ago where Braun Strowman and EC3 and Karrion Kross were talking about control your own narrative, CYN Wrestling, right? It was going to be a different company, a different culture. But then the Vince McMahon thing happened. The Vince McMahon thing is going to go down as one of the biggest game changers in all of professional sports. I refuse to call wrestling sports entertainment. They're not entertainers, they are professional wrestlers. You can tell me what you want, but entertainers do not get hurt. Wrestlers, whether it's staged or not, do get hurt. I respect the hell out of what they do on a normal basis because of number 1, their pay scale is not even close to being that of a baseball player or a football player or a basketball player or a soccer player or a hockey player. It's not even close. And they don't get the time off. They're working 365 days a year, a full-time schedule. So again, hats off to all the wrestlers out there. Respect the hell out of you. I continue to do that. And the reason why I bring up this Vince McMahon saga again is because the ultimate game changer is this. What I want to ask judgment on is I have an inkling in my mind that Stephanie McMahon is very vindictive. So you think about everything that's happened, right? The Hush Money saga, the mistresses, the affairs of Vince McMahon, the private money he's giving out, like behind the scenes to cover up all his sins in the past. That looks terrible from a family perspective for, again, the person that's helping run the company right now, his daughter and Stephanie McMahon. So when you think about it, when you talk about Stephanie McMahon, you don't think for one second that she wants to stick it to her dad for everything he's done, No matter how much she respects what he's done in the wrestling business, part of me says she is so vindictive that maybe some of these wrestlers aren't even coming back because they want them to come back. It's because she wants to stick it to her dad so bad because every single one of these people coming back are characters that Vince McMahon pushed out. Every single one of them. And every single one of them were Triple H guys. And again, Vince pushed them out under his creative direction. And now they're also, even my point is, I think even if they didn't want these guys back, I think Stephanie has taken every opportunity she can to rub it in her dad's face. And I think it's going to continue. Listen, Braun Strowman is a tremendous human being. Triple H is, I don't know if you've ever watched the Triple H story, but Paul went through his trials and tribulations coming up, right? He was told no 100 times. He was always told no until they gave him the Hunter Hearst Helmsley character. And he was kind of like a jobber and, he did what he could do, until the Triple H character was born in DX. I mean, that's when it kind of finally took over. And then, he still kept pushing and pushing and pushing to be the game. And I think that goes to, that speaks volumes to the kind of person that he is. This is a blue collar kid. Okay. He wasn't born with no silver spoon in his mouth. He worked for every goddamn thing he ever got. So again, I take a little offense, even though it doesn't offend me personally, when people say, "Oh, Triple H slept his way to the top." I completely disagree with that. I think he is a brilliant mind. I do. And you know what he is? I was having a discussion today. Went out to lunch with my mom. Try to do that every so often. It's great to spend time with your parents. For real, man. If you're blessed to still have them around, spend time with them. Time is precious. I'm talking to my mom, and we're talking about, treating people like human beings in a corporate environment. I think it could go a long way. And I think that's what H brings to the culture. I said it before. I said again, listen, I've worked for big companies, I've worked for big firms, and I've watched managers treat people like dog shit. Just because they think they can, because they think that they wear the stripes and they want to treat everybody like a soldier. That doesn't get you where you want to go. That doesn't get you respect. What you do is you get dogs that are going to do a job, but they're going to do a job. They're not going to be happy doing the job. They're not going to give you the quality of the job. And guess what? When you need them for a little extra, they're not going to be around. And that's what it was for Vince McMahon. And Triple H is completely different. He's one of the boys. You have to remember that. Triple H came up through the ranks. Triple H is one of the boys. Triple H is that guy, right? Triple H is that guy that everybody can look to and say, damn, if he went from Hunter Hearst Helmsley, right? If he went from Hunter Hearst Helmsley and he went to the game and now to the COO and now to the head of creative director, okay, and now basically the head of WWE, we can all do this, right? And that's a lifelong lesson to everybody. I'm going to be honest with you. I treat people like human beings, man. Like, treat people like human friggin' beings. Okay. No matter what environment you're at, you'd be very surprised of what treating people like a person can actually do. And again, and also on top of that is the hard work that Triple H put in. Triple H, and go watch the documentary. I'm not, listen, I don't get no money for that. I don't get no royalties. I don't get any of that. I'm just a big wrestling guy and a big firm believer in treating people with respect and treating people like human beings. And, if you do that, God will be good to you. Okay. Yeah. You might have one or two every now and then that kind of, rub you the wrong way. But for the most part, you being a human being and treating people with respect is what's going to win out. And that's what Triple H is doing with WWE. Listen, Road Dogg goes, he brings Road Dogg back again. Listen, Road Dogg was like, Road Dogg, he was in charge of the live events. I don't know if everybody knows this, but Road Dogg was in charge of the live events. And guess what? Under Road Dogg's direction, they were at record numbers at live events. And I'm not talking about Raw and SmackDown. I'm talking about WWE Live. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about those live events, that only, grab 10, 15,000, not 30, 40,000. He was selling them out. He was in charge of that, and Vince let him go. And guess what? Guess who's back? The Road Dogg Jesse James is back because Triple H sees. He sees it. And I'm telling you right now, there was a big call in AEW where it's been known that one thing's for sure. I told you guys, this is a competition. This is something that Triple H loves to be in. He loves competition. He loves coming out on top. They're making phone calls. They're getting in there and they're talking about what's going to happen, on the next contract extension. What are those guys in AEW that aren't happy? Who can we bring back? Who can we pry? Yeah, it's kind of bad business, but guess what? They're doing it, and they're going to continue to do it. James checking in says, "Talk about the D-Miz trade." Listen, this is what I will tell you. I can't let it out. I would give you personally. For me, I'm very excited to see him go to Cleveland and be teamed up with Darius Garland. I'm a big Darius Garland guy. I mean, you got Garland, you got Spider, you got Mobley, you got a really nice young nucleus out there in Cleveland in an Eastern Conference that's wide open. But if you make sure you're tuning into the show on Monday, James, because I got Kelsey Nicole Nelson on. I had her on. It's a pre-recorded interview. It's going to go live on Monday. I'm going to chop it all up. She touched on not only the D. Mitch trade, we touched on the Brooklyn Nets saga. We touched on the Sixers. Oh, we touched on some GOAT talk, MJ, LeBron, Steph Curry. Where does he fall? She has tremendous insight. So make sure you're tuning into that because you're really going to like those judgments as well. So yeah, the world of wrestling is going to get very interesting. It's going to continue to get interesting. Big pay-per-view this Saturday. Some rumors about maybe Roman dropping the belt. We'll see. Or both belts, I should say. Who knows? But all in all, I think it's going to get really, really interesting when it comes to the world of professional wrestling. So listen, guys, as always, for tuning in, man, we had a great show. A lot of good things to talk about. Remember, Judgment number 1's about the Philadelphia Eagles. Is the hype real? Is it real? You buying into the hype? Great interview with Chris Franklin at C Franklin News on Twitter. Make sure you give him a follow. Beat writer for NJ.com. Again, make sure you give him a follow. Make sure you're following at Judge Jigsaw as well. And you're subscribing to the YouTube channel and subscribe to the podcast because the full interview will be podcasted as well as this whole episode as well. So make sure you're checking it out because you get a lot more to say than what you heard in 8 minutes. Judgment number 2, fantasy sports has hit its ceiling. Is sports betting going to now take over? And what can fantasy sports do to kind of revive itself to get back to that precipice? Or is that 59 million number of people, is that going to be the ceiling as it was in 2018? And then we also have judgment number 3, and that comes to the world of professional wrestling. Will WWE continue to go down this road of bringing back talent that Vince McMahon didn't want around and building an entire new show format under the reigns of Triple H? Do you expect it to continue or do you expect it to flatten out? That is judgment number 3. But guys, as always, been tremendous. Make sure you're following all these accounts. I can't ask you enough. Subscribe to the YouTube page at Judge Jigsaw on Twitter and Instagram. Everything's there. Tons of content. I am working my ass off getting this out there. The response has been great. I love it. I love doing it. I want to continue to do it. Shout out to Heat Ratio Sports and Win Daily Sports for allowing this show to be powered by. Make sure you're checking out everything that those two sites have to offer. Make sure you're checking out, if you're in the digital marketing, SEObrand.net. I'm going to tell you more and more throughout the week of what they are all about and what they do. And myself, listen, man, if you're in fantasy sports, listen, I'm dropping home run props every single night when it comes to Major League Baseball at Cutillo 23, fantasy firebox every Saturday morning, 9 a.m. Sirius Satellite Radio. You'll hear me on the weekends, channel 87, on the XM dial. Throughout the week, it looks like Wednesday nights or Thursday nights. It's kind of like a new announcement, but Thursday nights on Jacob Media, Jacob Sports, I'll be tune in for a little fantasy segment with my man Pat Callahan on This Week in Football. See me just a little 10-minute segment, fantasy sports talk. So make sure you tune into that as well. But as always, like I say on this show all the time, Some people have thoughts and some people have takes, but on this show, you get the final judgment.